For the love of God. I get it, bird! Jesus. My God, I know it. It's ridiculous. Go away! Seriously, come back. Alright, I'm pretty sure there is a bird that is stalking me. Also, I'm probably going to sound like a crazy person to my neighbors, but I don't care. I wanted to record a video today, but I didn't want to be inside, and Kimba didn't want to be inside, so we're just out. We're out in the natures, and the natures won't shut the hell up. It's back. It's back. Guess who's back? Back again. Fucking bird. Tell a friend. Because we are about halfway through the year, and because I've been reading a lot this year, I thought I would take a look at what I've read so far and see what are my favorite books of 2018 so far. My end of the year lists can sometimes be very long, but also by the time I get to them I feel like I've forgotten what I read towards the beginning of the year, and I don't know, I've read some good things and I wanted to highlight them again. So I was gonna do 5 books, but I can never stick to a normal number, so I'm actually doing 6 books, but you know, it's been 6 months, so I think that's fine. This bird, man, this bird. Jesus Christ. And though I don't normally put things in like ranked order, I think I'm actually going to count these down, even though it's gonna be a fight. Ugh. Okay, so starting with number 6, the only reason I'm putting this at number 6, because I think I actually maybe did like it a little bit better. It might have had the edge a little bit over a couple of the other books on this list, but I actually had forgotten that I'd read it. I was going through my list in my bullet journals of all the books that I've read so far this year. It's towards the top, to be fair. It was in like January, so that's part of why I've forgotten, but I did kind of forget, and so, you know, I think that by default kind of pops it down to the bottom, but that book is The Last Namsara. I listened to this on audiobook, which I would highly recommend. I thought the audio was excellently done. There were a couple little things, like pronunciation things that got on my nerve, but for the most part, just stellar audio. Really great smoky voice, which I like. This one is fantasy, and it's pretty straightforward fantasy. It's about dragons, but it just, I don't know, man. Everything about it was kind of working for me. I was just eating it up. It's like a 12-hour audio, and I just tore through it. I have reviewed this one, so I will leave a link to it. In fact, I've reviewed 4 of the 6 of these, and the other 2 reviews will be going up soon. So where there are links to be had, I will link them, but basically this one had been super hyped, and I was a little bit hesitant going in because you know how hype books tend to work out, but the hype was right. People were right. It's strong. It was good. It was a good number 5. And this one I'm popping back and forth a little bit with. 5 and 4 are very, like, there's a nice edge between them, but I'm gonna say for number 5, it's The Price Guide to the Occult. Again, this is fantasy. It hits a lot of my buzzwords that I talked about recently, which is sort of multi-generational stories, especially female line generational stories, and a bit magical realism and just magical, small, quirky towns. Like, it has a lot of my buzzwords going for it, which is definitely part of what puts it on the list for me, and those things were done well. I would have loved actually more of the multi-generational thing. I mean, it had a lot of it. It's not that it didn't have enough, but what it had was just so well done. I would like a whole series of the backstories of the witches. The only thing that kind of lowers it down the list a little bit is that as it went on, it started to feel like it was snowballing slightly out of control. Things started to move too fast, loose ends were kind of tied up too easily. It just kind of, the strength of it lessened, it diminished by the time it got to the end, but all that said, I still really loved it. I think some people would maybe find it confusing or find it a little off-putting, but we all know I tend to eat those stories up, so for me, solid 5 on the favorite book so far, and I think that unless I have a stellar rest of the year, it and The Last Namsara will probably end up in my favorite books of the year, of the entire 2018 as well. And obviously the rest of these pretty much are shoe-ins. So as I said, very little separating 5th from 4th, but 4th is Bring Me Their Hearts. I will link to this because I just recently reviewed it. Again, it's not necessarily that it's groundbreaking, it's pretty typical. It can be really cheesy and over the top, but just so damn enjoyable throughout. I talked a lot about the reasons why and some of the reasons that I think people are going to disagree with me in my review, so just make sure to check that out. It's one of those books where for whatever reason I tore through, I ate up, and then I get on Goodreads and some people described it as slow, and I'm just like, okay, I don't get that. The only thing, again, that I would have a complaint about is the end, and for the same reasons. It wraps things up way too quickly, way too conveniently, kind of feels a little out of control in the end. Part of that, I think, is because it's a series, and it leaves on quite a cliffhanger for book 2, but loud ass truck, man. Lawnmower, somebody's riding a lawnmower. Don't tell them he's about to mow the lawn next door. Oh my lord. Okay, we've had a time change and a location change because the person that showed up in the little ride-on lawn thing was there to mow, apparently, and to weed whack, and I think possibly to chainsaw, because part of the neighbor's tree came down recently and they were like picking around under it and looking up at it and doing a lot of talking, so basically lots of noising things going on there, so I gave up. Should have gave up at the bird. And if I was a responsible vlogger, I would just start this video over, because it's not like I was that far in, but I'm not gonna do it. This is real life. This is what really happens. For real. Hashtag for real. And if you really want to be real, I'm also sitting here eating Ruffles. Now, back to it. So I was talking about Bring Me Their Hearts, which was my number 4 book that basically I felt was pretty strong all the way through. It was fun, it was acerbic, it was lightly Buffy-esque, but much like the price guide, it kind of fell a little bit at the end. I think that will bother some people. Also, apparently some people find it slow. I don't get that at all, but there you have it. At number 3, and this shows how just amazing my top 3 are, because this one is like an insta-fave, and yet it's still only at number 3, is Garden Spells by Sarah Addison Allen. This one was so recommended. I talked about Sarah Addison Allen recently in, I think, a Backlist Love video, and how she seems like the type of author that I would just love, and I had things on my shelves by her, and I've had people recommend her, but hadn't read anything by her, and everyone was like, oh my god, read Sarah Addison Allen, she's so up your alley. And specifically, a lot of people mentioned Garden Spells, so one day I was just like, yeah, I'm gonna. I had just done a Buzzwords chat, I'll link that, I know I've already mentioned it in this video, but in it I talked about a lot of the things that seemed like hallmarks of Sarah Addison Allen, and in the comments people were like, yes, absolutely, read Garden Spells, and I had it on my shelves, so I picked it up and just inhaled it. It was absolutely everything I was craving at the time. It was everything that I was talking about with those buzzwords as far as sort of soft magical realism and quirky small towns and sort of family dynamics and intergenerational magic and things like that. It just nailed it. It was exactly what I thought practical magic was going to be when I read Practical Magic. It's more practical magic than practical magic. If you've seen the movie and then read the book, you'll know what I'm talking about there. It just was firing on all cylinders. Again, the only slight bobble for me was that I feel like the end was wrapped up too quickly. The sort of villain aspect was wrapped up too quickly. It doesn't bother me too much because I feel like that wasn't really the point of the story. He was more a catalyst, so I didn't mind when he was kind of shuffled off stage, but it certainly could have been a little more tense, I guess, because there's a lot of build up through the whole story of like this collision course that they're on, and then when they get there it's just like nothing, really. That said, I loved it. I feel like it's a world and characters that I'm gonna want to revisit over and over again. I'm really glad that I have another book set in the same world with the same characters a little later on, already on my shelves. In fact, I was real tempted to pick it up immediately. Okay, I did kind of pick it up immediately and read a little bit, but I was in the middle of a bunch of other things, so I set it down for now. Basically, I'm real happy about those Sarah Addison Allen books that I have on my shelf just waiting for me, ready to dive into them. So ready. On to number 2. Now this, 1 and 2 are like this, and there are similar things, and in fact in my notes I wrote down the same keywords for why for both of these books. But number 2 is Tess of the Road by Rachel Hartman. You guys, I will link my review in which I sing its praises, because there was not a moment of this that I didn't love. It is complex and layered in a way that you don't always get in YA. There's no easy solution. There are problems that need to be worked through, and you just have to work through them in this book, and I so appreciate that. I find it really powerful. Some people I know will have a problem with the pacing. Some people always have a problem with Rachel Hartman's pacing. For me, it's the kind of pacing I like. You know, it's development over that sort of engaging rush, that immediacy that people tend to do, so that you fly through the book and feel like, oh, it must be amazing because I read it in a day. Not that. It's never that. It's always about development and getting there and working to get there, and I love that. I think it's a story that's very needed right now, especially for YA. I don't want to give too much away. If you're curious what I'm talking about, I do kind of go into that a little bit more in my review of it. That is another one that I know I'll want to go back to, and I know I'll get more out of it each time I do. I loved Tess. I related to Tess. I find her an excellent, strong female character in the right ways. You know, she's not perfect. She can be abrasive, and some people really hate that in female characters, and I think that's such a disservice to female characters and to women, because sometimes you're allowed to just be pissed, you know? I think Rachel Hartman used her as a vehicle to really tackle some things in such a brilliant way, and it's just, I love it. And I wrote down similar notes for my number 1 book, which again, they are like neck and neck. They are so like, I debated back and forth with these two. But number 1 is Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik. It is, again, the words that I wrote down that were in common are complex and layered and not easy. There's so much complexity. There are so many layers here. Again, this is one that I could read over and over and get something new out of each time. It is a retelling of Rumpelstiltskin that is so much more than that without ever leaving the story behind. You know, sometimes you read these retellings that are retelling in name only, or they have like the barest sort of thread that connects them, like, oh, it's a Cinderella story-ish. It's fully Rumpelstiltskin. You never really lose that. It goes so beyond that. It's masterful. It's masterful storytelling. It builds and builds and builds. It has a lot of POV characters, and that can be so difficult for people to read and for writers to do, but she does it in such a smart way where they're slowly added into the story. You get used to one voice, and then here comes someone else giving a new perspective. Sometimes the voices can be a little too similar, especially the main two female characters, but I think there are reasons for that. I think there are similarities with them that it makes sense in their narration style, but again, just genius. It's another one that I guarantee some people will call slow-paced, or will say that it takes, you know, too long to get to the point, or has no point, or is confusing, has too many characters, has unlikable characters, and I mean, that ticks all of my boxes. So for these top 2 especially, if you're one of those people that tends to agree with me on my slow burn, cold fish books, immediately go out and buy Tess of the Road and Spinning Silver. Spinning Silver is not out yet, I know. Pre-order that shit, because it is, I cannot sing their praises high enough. So those are my favorite books to this point of 2018, halfway through. That is 6 books out of 65 that I've read this year. I know that's insane. You don't have to tell me. I'm right there with you. Granted, some of those were comics and some of them were DNF, and some of them I'm still currently reading or have put down but intend to go back to and just haven't yet, but most of those are full on read, and most of the ones I've read have also been reviewed. I don't know who I am. I didn't frame this as a tag, but I would definitely love to know your favorite books that you've read so far this year, so take a few moments, think about it. If you want to make a video, absolutely do that, and send it my way. Tweet me, post it on Instagram, or you do a series of tweets, a little thread of them, whatever, at me, because I want to see what all you've read so far. That's just excellent. If you want to see more kind of halfway thoughts, like if you want my honorable mentions, or favorite comics and kids things, or my least favorites and my DNFs, let me know that too, because that could be done. But that is all for this video. Thank you guys for watching, and as always, of course, happy reading. Hopefully you made it through all of the nonsense and the bird, that damn bird. But if you didn't, who am I talking to? Okay. Me and Kimba. Oh, but I'll see you again soon, huh? We'll see them again soon? We'll see them again soon.